Welcome to Aerodoc Podcast, the dedicated platform for discussing the complexities of logistics and importation. We delve into the strategies and solutions that drive successful international expansion. Join us as we explore how Aerodoc can be your strategic partner in navigating the complexities of global trade.
Thank you for joining us for another episode. Today, we'll explore Incoterms and their impact on international logistics. Incoterms are 11 rules defining parties' responsibilities at each stage of a global transaction. These rules are defined by the International Chamber of Commerce, which has been responsible for their preparation and regular revision since 1936. To discuss their application and the opportunities they have generated, especially in the post-pandemic context, we have Estefanía Sisatzky, Senior Vice President of Operations and Customer Service at Aerodoc. Incoterms are represented by three-letter abbreviations, aiming to universalize these codes, similar to the flags of the International Code of Signals used by ships to communicate. Their function is to provide a regulatory framework between commercial parties, voluntarily accepted, in any type of international goods sales contract regarding the conditions of delivery, clarifying and unifying criteria for costs and responsibilities between the buyer and the seller. Currently, Incoterms are an exclusive requirement in any commercial invoice to reduce the risks of misunderstandings or different interpretations, which can have a significant economic impact on logistics for the parties involved. To better understand how a process involving Incoterms works, and what to consider when working with a logistics partner, we'll briefly mention the 7 most common Incoterms and define their meaning. EXW. Ex-works. The seller's responsibility is minimal, covering only packaging and verification. The buyer assumes all costs and risks from the seller's premises. FCA. Free carrier. The seller is responsible for delivery to a specified carrier. The buyer assumes the risk and costs from that point. CPT, carriage paid to, and CIP, carriage and insurance paid to. The seller covers transport and insurance for CIP to a specified destination. The risks transferred to the buyer once the goods are handed over to the carrier. DAP, delivered at place, and DPU, delivered at place and loaded. The seller covers most transport and unloading costs, but the buyer assumes the risk when unloading. DDP, delivery duty paid. The seller covers all costs and risks, including import duties, and delivery to the buyer's location. FAS, free alongside ship, and FOB, free on board. These terms are specific for maritime transport. The seller's responsibilities end once the goods are placed alongside the ship or on board. CFR, cost and freight, and CIF, cost, insurance, and freight. The seller covers transport and insurance for CIF to the destination port. The risk transfers to the buyer once the goods are loaded onto the ship. Let's now examine the practical application of these terms. Estefanía, thank you for joining us today. Let's start with the changes in Incoterms 2020.
Yes, in 2020, 2 Incoterms were updated in order to streamline processes and to clarify the specific responsibility they cover. This revision also bridged the gap between the maritime and the air transport industry, which previously has been treated differently. Also, a significant change was the inclusion of Australia and China in the drafting group, which is the committee responsible for defining, writing, and updating Incoterms. Traditionally, this group was dominated by European representatives, and this marks a great shift towards a greater global participation and inclusion.
What difficulties can clients face if they do not comply with these Incoterms?
Not adhering to an Incoterm typically means reaching a commercial agreement between the buyer and the seller. While these terms are backed up by global standards, they also represent a private contract between the two parties. So non-compliance can result in confusion, in shipment delays, and potentially in substantial financial losses for both parties.
Something no company wants. I think it's interesting to discuss how Aerodoc's services relate to Incoterms. When someone hires Aerodoc for delivery duty paid DDP with IOR services, we provide an end-to-end service, including Aerodoc's import license. As a value proposition, we name our services with the Incoterms acronyms to make them easier for potential clients and business partners to understand.
Exactly, yes. We offer pre-contract consulting services because Incoterms are often misused or misunderstood, sometimes due to the small or very subtle differences between them or simply because clients prefer to avoid certain terms within their commercial transactions. Our aim is always to provide the greatest value to our customers by guiding them towards the best operational design based on the Incoterms that drives their commercial agreement and operation as well.
That's very enlightening. We tell our listeners interested in learning more about Aerodoc to visit our website or contact our customer service team directly. We are always here to help and provide the best logistics solutions tailored to your needs. Thank you, Estefanía, for sharing your expertise with us today. And thank you, listeners. Stay tuned for our next episode, in which we'll explore more topics in international logistics.
Until next time, keep your logistics smooth and your business growing. This is Aerodoc Podcast, where global trade meets seamless solutions.